I helped my cheating husband's affair escalate until it destroyed his life. I, 34-year-old female, discovered 6 months ago that my husband, Troy, 36-year-old male, was having an affair with a coworker. Instead of confronting him, I decided to be the most supportive, accommodating wife possible, actively helping his affair progress faster than he could manage until it created chaos he couldn't control. I found out through a text notification on his tablet. The message was explicit and from someone named Bree. I checked his messages and found months of conversations planning meetups, expressing feelings, and coordinating lies. My first instinct was to confront him, but then I thought about how these things usually go. Confrontation, denial, gaslighting, maybe confession, promises to end it, couples therapy, and either reconciliation or divorce after months of painful conversations. I didn't want any of that. I wanted him to experience the natural consequences of his choices without me doing the emotional labor of confronting and processing it. So, I started helping instead. When Troy said he had to work late, I enthusiastically supported it. Of course, take your time, don't rush home. When he said he had a work conference on the weekend, I helped him pack. But I also started creating opportunities for the affair to escalate beyond his control. I, spontaneously, decided to take a girls' trip with friends, giving Troy a free weekend. I encouraged him to use our home when I was gone. Why don't you have your coworkers over? I'm sure you all work so hard and never get to relax together. Troy seemed thrilled by my sudden flexibility. He brought Bree to our house that weekend. I knew because I'd installed hidden cameras. Did I go too far by secretly helping my husband's affair progress instead of confronting him? I started arranging situations where my husband's affair partner would meet his family. After giving Troy freedom to use our house for his affair, I shifted to making his double life more complicated. I started engineering situations where Bree would accidentally intersect with parts of Troy's life she didn't know about, specifically his family. Troy's parents live nearby and frequently visit. His mother has a key to our house. I started forgetting to tell Troy when his mother planned to stop by. One Saturday when Troy had told me he was at the gym, but was actually with Bree at a hotel, I called his mother asking if she could water our plants because I'd be out. I knew Troy had our shared calendar access, so he'd see I was supposed to be home. Troy came home early from the hotel to find his mother in our house. She mentioned he'd told her he'd be at the gym. The inconsistency was small, but noticeable. I started doing this regularly, creating situations where Troy's alibis didn't quite match up in front of family members. Nothing dramatic enough for confrontation, just enough to make people start noticing inconsistencies. Then I suggested Troy bring me to his work happy hour, the one where Bree would be. Troy panicked and made excuses, so I volunteered to bring food to his office for his birthday celebration, where Bree would have to see me as his wife. I watched Bree's face when she realized Troy was married. The confusion, then betrayal. She'd been told Troy was divorced. Troy's affair was now exposed to his affair partner. His family had started noticing lies, and he didn't know I'd orchestrated any of it. The affair partner contacted me and I sent her everything proving he'd lied to both of us. 3 weeks after Bree discovered Troy was still married, she messaged me through social media. She apologized, saying she'd had no idea Troy was married and had been told he was divorced for 2 years. I could have been cold to her, but instead I was kind. I sent her screenshots from Troy's tablet showing their entire relationship timeline, alongside photos I'd posted on social media during that same period showing Troy and me on anniversary dinners, family vacations, and normal married life. The evidence made it clear. Troy had lied to both of us. He'd told me he was working late and told her he was divorced. Bree was horrified. She told me she'd been planning a future with him. He'd discussed moving in together. She'd introduced him to her parents as her boyfriend. Everything was based on him being a divorced man starting over. I suggested she forward all of Troy's messages to his work email and HR, since they had a policy against office relationships that create conflicts. She did. Within a week, Troy was under investigation at work for the inappropriate relationship and for using company time and resources for personal matters. Bree filed a complaint saying he'd lied about his marital status. Troy came home devastated, asking why I wasn't supporting him through this difficult time at work. I finally said, "I've been supporting your affair for 6 months. I gave you opportunities, I enabled your lies, I helped it escalate. Everything that's happening is the natural result of choices I supported you in making." His face went white. He'd thought he'd been getting away with it. He hadn't realized I'd been orchestrating the collapse. I stopped managing my cheating husband's life and watched him fall apart without realizing why. I, 33-year-old female, discovered 6 weeks ago that my husband, Elliot, 35-year-old male, was having an affair with someone he met through work. Instead of confronting him, I quietly stopped doing all the invisible mental and emotional labor that kept his life running smoothly, and watched him struggle without understanding why everything suddenly felt harder. I found out through a suspicious charge on our credit card for a weekend getaway I wasn't included in. When I checked his messages, I confirmed an affair with someone named Renee, lasting about 3 months. My first instinct was confrontation and anger, but then I realized something. Elliot had no idea how much I managed to keep his life functional. I remembered appointments, tracked bills, maintained our social calendar, handled household logistics, managed family obligations, prepared meals, bought gifts for his family, reminded him of important dates. I was his external brain, and he'd never noticed. I decided to simply stop. No dramatic announcement, no confrontation, just quiet withdrawal of all the invisible work I did. I stopped reminding Elliot about anything. Doctor appointments, work deadlines, family birthdays, car maintenance. If it wasn't on his own calendar, it wouldn't happen. I stopped managing our household. No grocery shopping for his preferences, no meal planning, no restocking his toiletries. I stopped maintaining his social obligations. His mother's birthday came and went without a gift or call from him because I didn't remind him. Within a week, Elliot's life started showing cracks. My husband's life became chaos without my invisible labor while he blamed stress. As I continued my silent withdrawal, Elliot's life began unraveling in small but accumulating ways. He missed a dentist appointment I'd normally remind him about. He showed up to his nephew's birthday party empty-handed because I didn't prompt him to buy a gift. He forgot his father's anniversary and got an angry call. Elliot seemed confused and stressed. "Why does everything feel so chaotic lately? I'm forgetting things I never used to forget." I'd say sympathetically, "Maybe you're stressed with work?" He'd agree, not realizing that never used to forget actually meant you never had to remember because I managed it for you. His performance at work suffered because he'd miss deadlines or forget meetings I used to track for him. His boss commented on his disorganization. His family started complaining that he was becoming flaky and unreliable. Meanwhile, Elliot continued his affair with Renee, spending time and energy on her while his real life fell apart around him. I watched as he became increasingly frazzled. His clothes weren't washed because I'd stopped doing his laundry. He'd run out of deodorant or shaving cream because I'd stopped restocking. He'd miss social events because I'd stopped maintaining our calendar. Through messages I glimpsed on his phone, I could see even Renee was noticing. "You seem really scattered lately. Is everything okay?" Elliot was struggling to maintain both his affair and his regular life because he'd never had to manage either. I'd been managing his life while he focused on everything else. My husband's affair partner left him because he became too disorganized and unreliable. 8 weeks after I stopped managing Elliot's life, Renee ended their affair because Elliot had become too chaotic and unreliable. He came to me devastated, and I finally told him why his life had fallen apart. I'd stopped doing the invisible work he'd never noticed I was doing. Elliot came home upset. Renee ended things with me. I acted confused. Renee? Who's that? He admitted the affair, saying Renee had been seeing him, but ended it because he'd become too disorganized and stressed, and she couldn't rely on him for anything anymore. I said calmly, "When did you become disorganized?" He thought about it. "The last couple months. I don't know what happened. I'm forgetting things, missing appointments. My life feels like it's falling apart." I said, "That's when I stopped managing your life for you. I stopped reminding you of appointments, tracking your obligations, managing your schedule, maintaining your relationships, organizing your existence. Everything that's fallen apart? That's what I was doing invisibly for years." Elliot looked stunned. "You were doing all that?" I said, "You never noticed because it was invisible. You thought you were naturally organized. You weren't. I was organizing you." He realized I'd known about the affair. "You knew about Renee and you just stopped helping me?" I said, "You had energy for an affair because I was managing your life. When I stopped, you couldn't maintain both because you've never had to manage anything yourself. Renee left you because without my invisible labor, you fell apart." Elliot tried to apologize and fix things, but I'd already filed for divorce. His affair had ended, his life was chaos, and he'd finally understood how much work I'd been doing that he'd never acknowledged or appreciated. He'd thought he was self-sufficient. He'd just been supported by invisible labor he'd never noticed until it was gone. I became the perfect spouse after discovering the affair and guilt destroyed my wife. I, 31 years a male, discovered 7 weeks ago that my wife, Meredith, 30-year-old female, was having an affair with someone from her book club. Instead of confronting her, I became the most attentive, loving, perfect husband possible, making her guilt so overwhelming that it destroyed the affair more effectively than any confrontation could. I found out through messages on her tablet. The affair partner was Logan, someone she'd met 6 months ago. The messages showed a deep emotional and physical connection, meeting twice a week under the guise of book club meetings. My first reaction was anger and hurt. But then I thought about what makes affairs appealing, the contrast between the exciting affair partner and the boring spouse at home. What if I removed that contrast? I started being aggressively perfect. I'd wake up early to make Meredith's favorite breakfast. I'd leave love notes around the house. I'd plan surprise date nights. I'd give unprompted massages. I'd listen intently to everything she said, remember small details, follow up on conversations. I became the husband people write romance novels about. At first, Meredith seemed happy with the attention, but within days, I could see something shifting. She looked uncomfortable receiving my affection. She'd seem guilty when I'd do something thoughtful. The more perfect I was, the worse she seemed to feel about her affair. My wife's guilt became so crushing she could barely enjoy being with her affair partner. As I continued being the ideal spouse, Meredith's guilt visibly intensified. She'd come home from seeing Logan and I'd greet her warmly, ask about her day, tell her I'd missed her. She'd look devastated. I'd plan romantic gestures. "I booked us a couple's spa day this weekend because you've seemed stressed." She'd have to cancel with Logan to attend, feeling terrible the whole time. I'd express gratitude constantly. "I'm so lucky to have you. You make my life better every day." She'd tear up and excuse herself to the bathroom. Through messages I'd check on her tablet, I could see the guilt bleeding into her affair. "Logan, you seem distant lately." Meredith, "I'm sorry. My husband has been so wonderful lately and I feel terrible." Logan, "That's the guilt talking. He probably senses something and is overcompensating." But I wasn't overcompensating. I was deliberately weaponizing kindness. Meredith started pulling away from Logan. Their messages became less frequent, her responses shorter. When they'd meet, she'd leave early saying she needed to get home. The affair that had been exciting and validating was now just a source of crushing guilt. Every kind thing I did made it harder for her to enjoy Logan's company. She'd come home from seeing him looking miserable rather than energized. The affair ended from guilt, and I revealed I'd known all along and weaponized my perfection. 5 weeks into being the perfect husband, Meredith confessed her affair through tears, ending it herself because the guilt had become unbearable. I told her I'd known the entire time and had deliberately made her guilt destroy the relationship. She came to me crying. "I need to tell you something. I've been having an affair with someone from book club, but I ended it. I couldn't handle the guilt anymore." I said gently, "I know about Logan. I've known for 7 weeks." Her face crumpled. "You knew? This whole time you've been so perfect and loving, and you knew." I nodded. "I found out early on. I decided instead of confronting you, I'd just be the best husband possible and let your guilt destroy the affair for you." She looked horrified. "You deliberately made me feel guilty? All those sweet gestures were manipulation?" I said, "Every kind thing I did was genuine in execution, but strategic in intent. I wanted you to feel the full weight of betraying someone who loved you perfectly. And it worked. The guilt made the affair unbearable." Meredith said the past few weeks had been torture. Every kind gesture I'd made felt like a knife. She couldn't enjoy time with Logan because she'd think about me at home being wonderful. The affair lost all its appeal because the contrast she'd sought didn't exist anymore. I said, "Affairs thrive on feeling underappreciated at home." I removed that justification. You had a perfect spouse, and you still betrayed him. There was no one to blame but yourself. I filed for divorce the next day. Meredith begged to work on the marriage, saying she'd ended the affair and wanted to fix things. I said, "You ended it because I made you too guilty to enjoy it, not because you genuinely chose me. That's manipulation, meeting manipulation." The affair ended not from discovery, but from guilt I deliberately cultivated through weaponized perfection. I befriended my husband's affair partner without her knowing who I was. I, 33-year-old female, discovered 7 weeks ago that my husband, Nathan, 35-year-old male, was having an affair with a woman named Jessa. Instead of confronting either of them, I found Jessa online, struck up a friendship with her, and let her tell me all about her secret relationship with a married man, not knowing I was his wife. I found out through Nathan's credit card statement showing charges at a restaurant we'd never been to. When I asked about it, he said it was a work dinner, but the same restaurant appeared multiple times, always on Tuesday nights when he claimed to be at the gym. I looked up the restaurant's location and realized it was near a yoga studio. I found their Instagram and saw tagged photos, including one of a woman named Jessa who'd posted about the best date night spot. I found Jessa on social media. She was a yoga instructor, 29, and frequently posted inspirational content about following your heart and living authentically. The irony wasn't lost on me. I created a fake Instagram account as someone new to the city looking for wellness communities. I started commenting on Jessa's posts and eventually DM'd her asking for yoga studio recommendations. She was friendly and warm. We started chatting regularly. Within 2 weeks, we'd become online friends, messaging daily about life, work, and relationships. Then, Jessa started confiding in me about her romantic life. She was dating a wonderful man, but it was complicated. He was married. I was talking to my husband's mistress about their affair, and she had no idea I was the wife. My husband's affair partner told me everything about their relationship, thinking I was her friend. Once Jessa started confiding in me about her complicated relationship, I became her primary emotional support. She'd message me constantly about her married boyfriend, sharing details, asking for advice, expressing doubts, all while I pretended to be a sympathetic new friend in the city. She told me everything. They'd met at the gym 6 months ago. He'd told her his marriage was essentially over, and they were staying together for convenience. He'd said he was planning to leave me but needed to handle it delicately. All lies. Our marriage had issues but wasn't over. Nathan had never mentioned divorce or being unhappy enough to leave. Jessa would message me her insecurities. "Do you think I'm crazy for believing him? Everyone says the married guy never leaves his wife." I'd respond supportively, "Trust your instincts, but also protect yourself." She'd share her frustrations. "We can only see each other on Tuesdays and occasional weekends when his wife is out of town. I want more." I knew the Tuesday schedule. That was Nathan's gym night. And the weekends when I was out of town, I'd be at home. Nathan was lying to both of us about my schedule. Jessa sent me screenshots of their text conversations for advice. I saw Nathan telling her he loved her, making promises about their future, saying he'd leave me soon. Through Jessa's eyes, I saw Nathan as someone desperate to preserve his affair by lying to both of us. She believed in a future he was never going to deliver. I revealed I was the wife after she'd told me everything and watched both relationships collapse. After 6 weeks of friendship, where Jessa had shared every detail of her affair with Nathan, I decided it was time to reveal who I was. I invited Jessa to meet in person for coffee, something we'd discussed but never done. She arrived excited to finally meet her online friend. I'd prepared screenshots of our entire conversation history. When she sat down, I said, "I need to tell you something. My real name isn't Emily. I'm Nathan's wife." Her face drained of color. She started to leave, but I asked her to wait. I showed her the screenshots of everything she'd told me over 6 weeks. Every lie Nathan had told her, every promise he'd made, every frustration she'd shared. I said, "He told you our marriage was over. We had dinner together last night. He told you I'm out of town most weekends. I'm home every weekend. He told you he's planning to leave me. He bought us theater tickets for next month." Jessa was shaking. She said, "Why would you do this? Become my friend just to hurt me?" I said, "I didn't do it to hurt you. I did it to learn the truth. And the truth is he's been lying to both of us." I left her the screenshots and walked out. Within hours, Jessa had sent everything to Nathan. All our conversations, including her admitting details about the affair she'd never have told me directly. Nathan came home furious that I'd manipulated and deceived Jessa. I said, "I deceived her the same way you deceived both of us. You told her you were leaving me. You told me you were at the gym. Everyone was lying to everyone." Both relationships ended. Jessa felt betrayed that I'd befriended her under false pretenses. Nathan felt violated that I'd extracted affair details through deception. But I'd learned everything I needed to know about who he really was when he thought I couldn't hear him. I convinced my cheating girlfriend I wanted an open relationship and watched her get careless. I, 28-year-old male, discovered 2 months ago that my girlfriend, Leah, 27-year-old female, of 3 years, was cheating with someone from her book club. Instead of confronting her, I pretended to have an epiphany about wanting an open relationship, encouraging her to be honest about her affair partner while I documented everything for when I'd eventually leave. I found out when I saw messages on her phone from someone named Chris. They'd been together for 4 months, meeting weekly under the guise of book club meetings. The messages were intimate and romantic. Rather than confront her, I decided to try something unconventional. That evening, I initiated a conversation. "I've been thinking about relationship structures. What do you think about ethical non-monogamy?" Leah looked surprised. "Like, open relationships?" I said, "Yeah, I've been reading about it. I think we're secure enough to explore that if we wanted to." She was shocked but intrigued. "Are you saying you'd want to see other people?" I said, "I'm saying I trust us enough to be honest about connections with others. If either of us develops feelings for someone else, we should be able to discuss it openly instead of hiding it." I watched her face shift from guilt to relief. She said cautiously, "That's surprisingly mature." Over the next week, I brought up open relationships casually, sharing articles, asking her thoughts. I was giving her permission to legitimize her affair. My girlfriend started openly seeing her affair partner after I gave her permission, not knowing it was a trap. Once I'd established that I was interested in exploring ethical non-monogamy, Leah took the bait. Within 2 weeks, she came to me nervously saying she'd connected with someone and wanted to be honest about it. I acted supportive. "I appreciate you telling me. Tell me about them." She introduced me to Chris as her other partner. We had dinner together, me, Leah, and the man she'd been cheating with, now legitimized as her boyfriend in what she thought was an open relationship. I was friendly with Chris, asking about his life, his interests. He seemed uncomfortable at first, expecting jealousy, but I acted completely secure and supportive. Leah started spending nights at Chris's place openly. She'd tell me when she was seeing him. She introduced him to our friends as her other partner. She posted couple photos with him on social media. What Leah didn't know, I'd been documenting everything. Every time she was with Chris, I noted it. Every introduction she made, I recorded. Every friend group she told about our open relationship, I kept track of. Meanwhile, I wasn't seeing anyone else. When Leah asked why, I'd say, "I'm taking my time finding the right connection, no rush." She seemed relieved that I wasn't actively dating, making her affair feel safer. After 6 weeks, Leah had fully integrated Chris into her life openly. Our friends knew about him. Her family had met him. She was living a double life publicly, thinking she had permission. I revealed we were never actually open after she'd told everyone, exposing her cheating publicly. 8 weeks after convincing Leah we were in an open relationship, I ended things, revealing that I'd known about her affair the entire time and had never actually wanted an open relationship. I gathered Leah and several of our mutual friends and said, "I need to clarify something about our relationship. We're not in an open relationship. We never were." Leah looked confused. "What? But we discussed this. You said you were interested in ethical non-monogamy." I said, "I knew you were cheating with Chris. Instead of confronting you, I pretended to want an open relationship to see if you'd legitimize your affair. You did." Her face went pale. Our friends looked shocked. I continued, "For 8 weeks, you've been openly seeing Chris, introducing him to friends and family, posting about him on social media, all thinking you had my permission. But it was never real. You were cheating, and I gave you rope to hang yourself with." I showed everyone the original messages I'd found proving the affair had started before our open relationship discussion. The timeline made it clear. She'd been cheating, and I'd trapped her into exposing herself publicly. Leah tried to argue that I'd manipulated her, that she'd thought she had permission. But everyone could see she'd never actually confessed to cheating. She'd just accepted my offer to legitimize it. Our friends were disgusted. Her family, who'd met Chris thinking this was a consensual arrangement, felt deceived. Chris ended things, realizing he'd been the affair partner in a scheme. Leah lost the relationship, her reputation, and her affair partner in one revelation. She'd thought she'd gotten away with cheating by having it legitimized. She hadn't realized I was collecting evidence of her willingness to betray our relationship the entire time. I discovered the cheating and just started living my best life without saying anything. I, 30-year-old female, found out 5 months ago that my husband, Garrett, 32-year-old male, was having an affair with someone from his CrossFit gym. Instead of confronting him or spiraling into devastation, I made a strange choice. I decided to just start genuinely living my best life and let whatever happened happen naturally. I discovered it through a text on his smartwatch while we were watching TV. The message was from Riley saying she missed him. I scrolled through their conversation history. 6 months of an affair, clearly physical and emotional. My first reaction was the expected devastation. I went to bed that night feeling crushed. But the next morning, I woke up with an odd clarity. I'd been unhappy in this marriage for a while. Garrett's affair wasn't the cause of my unhappiness. It was a symptom of a relationship that hadn't been working. So, instead of confronting him or trying to save the marriage, I just started focusing on myself. I signed up for pottery classes I'd been interested in for years. I reconnected with friends I'd neglected. I started running in the mornings. I began reading again, something I'd stopped doing. Within 2 weeks, I felt lighter than I had in years. Not because of schadenfreude or revenge. I genuinely felt better focusing on myself instead of on the dying marriage. Garrett noticed, "You seem different, happier?" I smiled. "I feel good lately." I wasn't faking it. I was actually thriving. My life improved so much after finding out about the affair that my husband got confused. As I continued focusing on myself rather than the affair, my life transformed rapidly. I lost weight not from stress but from actually enjoying exercise. I made new friends through my pottery class. I got a promotion at work because I was more focused. I was genuinely flourishing. Meanwhile, Garrett seemed increasingly unsettled. He'd come home to find me laughing on the phone with friends, or working on a pottery piece, or reading contentedly. I was pleasant with him but emotionally detached, not coldly, just not invested. He started trying to engage more. "Want to watch our show? Should we plan a date night? Everything okay with us?" I'd respond pleasantly, "Sure, if you want." "Maybe. I'm pretty busy with my class schedule, though." "Everything's fine." But I wasn't fighting for the relationship. I wasn't initiating connection. I was just there, but not really present. Garrett's affair seemed to be causing him more stress than joy. He'd come home looking guilty and find me genuinely happy, which clearly confused him. He'd expected me to be needy or suspicious, giving him justification for the affair. Instead, I was thriving. One night he asked directly, "Are you happy?" I considered it honestly. "Yeah, actually, I am. I've been focusing on things that make me happy. My hobbies, my friendships, my work. It's been really good." He looked disturbed. "But what about us?" I shrugged. "What about us? You do your thing, I do mine. We're fine." I meant it. I genuinely didn't care anymore. My husband ended his affair because I'd become too happy without him. 4 months into my genuine happiness journey, Garrett came to me devastated, saying he'd made a terrible mistake and ended his affair. But it wasn't guilt that made him confess. It was panic that I no longer needed him and was thriving without emotional investment in our marriage. He said, "I ended things with Riley. I've been having an affair. I'm so sorry." I said calmly, "I know. I've known for months." His face went pale. "You knew? And you didn't say anything?" I shrugged. "I thought about confronting you, but honestly, I realized I'd been unhappy for a while. Finding out about the affair clarified that for me, so I just started focusing on myself instead." He looked panicked. "But you've been so happy. You've been thriving. I thought we were okay." I said, "I've been happy because I stopped investing emotional energy in a marriage that wasn't working. The affair was your thing. I had my pottery and friends and work. We were roommates." Garrett broke down. "I ended the affair because I realized I'm losing you. You don't need me anymore. You're complete without me." I realized he was right. I said, "I think I am." He begged to work on the marriage, but I'd already emotionally moved on. The affair had freed me to discover I was happier alone than in a mediocre marriage. I filed for divorce 2 weeks later. Garrett was devastated, saying he'd ended the affair to save us. I said, "You ended it because you realized I'd stopped fighting for you. But I'd already left emotionally months ago." The affair didn't destroy me. It liberated me to realize I deserved better than a relationship I had to fight to maintain. I discovered my wife's affair and became a complete stranger to her while still married. I, 29-year-old male, found out 3 months ago that my wife Amber, 28-year-old female, was having an affair with someone from her book club. Instead of confronting her or filing for divorce, I decided to simply stop being her husband emotionally while remaining married legally, essentially becoming a polite roommate she no longer knows. I discovered the affair when Amber left her laptop open with messages to someone named Eric. They'd been seeing each other for about 5 months, meeting at his apartment when she told me she was at book club or running errands. Reading those messages, I felt something unexpected. Not rage or betrayal, but a strange sense of liberation. I realized I'd been performing the role of attentive husband out of obligation, not genuine desire. The affair gave me permission to stop. I didn't confront Amber. I simply stopped participating in our marriage emotionally. I started saying no to things I'd always agreed to out of obligation. "Want to visit my parents this weekend?" "No, I have other plans." "Should we watch our show tonight?" "I'm not really interested in that show anymore." I joined a boxing gym and started training 4 nights a week. I reconnected with old friends Amber had never liked. I started saying yes to work travel I'd always declined. Within 2 weeks, I'd built a social life completely separate from Amber. I was barely home, and when I was polite but distant, like a cordial roommate. Amber seemed confused but also relieved. My absence gave her more freedom for her affair. I was becoming someone she didn't recognize, and I was enjoying it. I rebuilt my entire life while my cheating wife watched me become someone she never knew. After establishing emotional distance, I started actively building a life Amber had no access to. I made new friends, developed new interests, and essentially became a stranger who happened to share a home with her. I joined social groups Amber knew nothing about: a rock climbing club, a film discussion group, a volunteer organization. I made friends who'd never met Amber and knew nothing about my marriage. When they asked about my relationship status, I'd say, "It's complicated," and change the subject. I started dressing differently, clothes Amber had never seen me in, a new hairstyle, even different cologne. I redecorated my home office without consulting her. I bought art I liked without asking her opinion. At home, I was polite and functional, but completely disconnected. We'd eat dinner separately. I stopped asking about her day. When she tried to initiate conversation about us or our relationship, I'd respond with non-committal pleasantries. "We're fine. Everything's fine." I could see her becoming unsettled. She'd expected me to either confront her about the affair or remain the same accommodating husband I'd always been. Instead, I was neither angry nor accommodating. I was simply absent, even when present. She started asking questions. "Where are you going? Who are these new friends? Why are you different lately?" I'd answer vaguely, "Out. People from the gym. I'm not different, I'm just doing things I enjoy." The person she'd been married to for 5 years was disappearing, replaced by someone she didn't know, and she was starting to panic. My wife ended her affair because losing a stranger was worse than losing a husband. 2 months into my transformation, Amber's affair ended abruptly. She told me tearfully that she'd made a huge mistake and wanted to work on our marriage. I realized she'd ended things with Eric not because she'd chosen me, but because she'd become terrified of the stranger I'd become. She said, "I don't recognize you anymore. You're like a different person. Where's the man I married?" I said, "I'm exactly who I've always been. I just stopped performing for you." She broke down, admitting the affair and begging for forgiveness. She said she'd been confused and made terrible choices. But seeing me become someone she didn't know had shown her what she was losing. But here's what she didn't understand. She wasn't losing me. She was losing the version of me that had existed solely to accommodate her. That person was gone. I told her, I know about Eric. I've known for 3 months. I didn't confront you because I didn't care enough to fight for a marriage I wasn't happy in. Your affair freed me to become who I actually am. She was devastated, saying I'd given up on us without even trying. I said, you gave up when you started the affair. I just accepted it and moved on while still sleeping in the same house. I filed for divorce the next week. The irony wasn't lost on me. Amber ended her affair to save our marriage, but by then I'd already built a life that didn't include her. She'd thought living with me while having an affair was sustainable. She hadn't expected that I'd use that same time to become someone she couldn't reach. I found out about the affair and became the most demanding wife possible. I, 32-year-old female, discovered 2 months ago that my husband, Craig, 34-year-old, was having an affair with someone from his office. Instead of leaving or confronting him, I decided to make his life so difficult and demanding that his affair stopped being a stress escape and became another source of exhaustion he couldn't manage. I found out through a receipt for flowers I never received. When I asked about it, Craig said they were for his boss's birthday, but his assistant confirmed no one at the office had a birthday that week. I checked his credit card statements and found a pattern. Expensive dinners, hotel rooms, gifts, all while he'd been telling me we needed to tighten our budget. Instead of confronting him, I had a different idea. Craig's affair was clearly an escape from real-life responsibilities. He got to be the fun, romantic version of himself with her, while being the stressed, responsible husband with me. So, I decided to make the responsible husband role so demanding that he'd have no energy left for being the fun boyfriend. I started asking Craig to handle every household task I'd normally do. Can you do the grocery shopping this week? I'm so busy. The bathroom needs cleaning. Could you handle it? We need to organize the garage this weekend. When he'd try to make evening plans, I'd create conflicts. Actually, we need to deal with that insurance issue tonight. Or, your mom called, we should visit this weekend. My cheating husband became so overwhelmed with demands that his affair partner started complaining. As I increased Craig's responsibilities at home, he became visibly stressed and exhausted. Every evening he came home, there was a new task, a new crisis, a new demand. I wasn't being unreasonable, these were all legitimate household needs. I was just no longer handling them myself. Craig had to meal plan, grocery shop, do laundry, schedule appointments, handle home repairs, manage our social calendar, deal with family obligations. All the invisible labor I'd been doing for years, I started delegating to him. When he'd say he was too tired or too busy, I'd respond, I've been handling this alone for years. I need help. We're partners, right? He couldn't argue without seeming like a bad husband. I found out through messages I saw on his phone that his affair partner, Dahlia, was getting frustrated with his sudden unavailability and stress. Dahlia, you seem so stressed lately. I thought being with me was supposed to make you happy. Craig, I am happy with you. Home stuff is just overwhelming right now. Dahlia, you're always exhausted when we meet, and you keep canceling plans. Craig was canceling affair dates because he was genuinely too overwhelmed with household responsibilities. The affair that was supposed to be his escape had become another obligation he didn't have energy for. Meanwhile, I continued adding to his plate. We need to deep clean the house this weekend. Or, your car inspection is due, can you handle that? The affair ended because I made my husband too exhausted to maintain a secret relationship. After 6 weeks of overwhelming Craig with responsibilities, his affair with Dahlia ended. She broke up with him, telling him he was too stressed and unavailable, and that being with him felt like work instead of fun. Craig came home devastated, and I acted sympathetic. He said, Dahlia broke up with me. She said I've been too distant and stressed. I feigned confusion. Dahlia? Who's that? He realized his slip. Just someone from work I was close with. I pressed gently. Were you seeing her? Craig broke down and admitted everything. The affair, the lies, the double life. He said, "But it ended. She couldn't handle how stressed I've been with everything at home." I said calmly, "So let me understand this. You were having an affair, and it ended because you were too overwhelmed with basic household responsibilities that I'd been handling alone for years, while you had time for her?" Craig went pale, realizing what I was implying. I continued, "I've been doing all of this work while you had an affair. When you finally had to do half of it, you couldn't maintain your secret relationship because you were too tired." He realized I'd known and had deliberately overwhelmed him. I said, "You had energy for an affair when I was carrying the entire household burden. The moment you had to share that burden, you couldn't maintain it. That tells me everything." Craig begged to fix things, but I filed for divorce the next week. He'd shown me that his affair was only possible because I'd been making his life easy enough that he had spare energy for someone else. Making him actually contribute to our household had destroyed his affair more effectively than any confrontation. Dahlia had wanted the fun, relaxed version of him, but that version only existed because I'd been doing all the work. I left clues I knew about the affair and watched my husband spiral into paranoia. I, 32-year-old female, discovered 4 months ago that my husband, Miles, 34-year-old male, was having an affair with his assistant. Instead of confronting him directly, I started leaving subtle clues that I knew, small enough to create doubt, specific enough to make him paranoid, never quite explicit enough for him to address directly. I found out when Miles left his email open on our shared iPad. There were romantic messages to Sienna, discussing hotels, feelings, and future plans. I took screenshots but said nothing. Instead, I started leaving breadcrumbs. I casually mentioned over dinner, "Your assistant seems nice, Sienna, right? You two must work closely together." Miles went pale, but I changed the subject immediately. A few days later, I left a hotel receipt I'd printed from his email on the kitchen counter. Not prominently, just mixed with other papers. Miles found it and quickly threw it away, glancing at me nervously. I acted like I hadn't noticed. I started bringing up the affair hotel in conversation. "Have you been to that Marriott downtown? I heard it's nice." Miles would tense, but couldn't ask why I was mentioning it without revealing something. I'd reference things only someone reading his messages would know. Dates he'd been with her, restaurants they'd discussed. Never direct accusations, just casual mentions that made him wonder if I knew. Within 2 weeks, Miles was visibly stressed, checking his phone constantly, looking over his shoulder. I never confirmed I knew anything. I just let him spiral. My husband started covering his tracks frantically while I pretended not to notice. As I continued leaving subtle clues, Miles became increasingly paranoid and sloppy. He started overcompensating, being suspiciously attentive, changing passwords frantically, and making obvious mistakes that revealed his guilt while I maintained total innocence. He'd come home with flowers randomly, saying, "Just because." He'd volunteer detailed explanations for where he'd been when I hadn't asked. He started leaving his phone face down constantly and would jump if I walked into a room unexpectedly. I kept up the psychological pressure with innocent-seeming comments. When he said he had a late meeting, I'd say, "Another late one? That's the 3rd this week. Good thing Sienna's there to help you." His face would twitch, but he'd just nod. I started accidentally calling him when I knew he was with her. When he'd answer sounding stressed, I'd cheerfully say, "Just checking in. Wanted to see how your day was going." He'd sound panicked, quickly getting off the call. I'd leave tabs open on our computer for divorce lawyers, quickly closing them when he walked by, but not quickly enough that he wouldn't notice. Miles started sleeping poorly. He'd wake up in the middle of the night and I'd catch him staring at me, clearly wondering what I knew. I'd smile and go back to sleep. He began making mistakes, calling me Sienna once, then frantically correcting himself, mentioning details about work events that contradicted his calendar. His lies were falling apart under the pressure of not knowing whether I knew. My husband confessed when the paranoia became unbearable, but I'd already moved on. 3 months into my psychological campaign, Miles broke down and confessed everything. Not because he wanted to come clean, but because the paranoia of not knowing what I knew had destroyed him mentally, and he couldn't take it anymore. He sat me down, shaking, and said, "I need to tell you something. I've been having an affair with Sienna for 6 months." I let silence hang for a moment, then said, "I know." His face crumbled. "You know? How long have you known?" I said, "Since the beginning. I've been waiting for you to tell me." He looked horrified, realizing every subtle comment, every coincidental mention, every strategic moment over the past 3 months had been deliberate. I'd known all along and had been psychologically torturing him with uncertainty. "Why didn't you just confront me?" he asked, almost angry. I said, "Because watching you unravel, wondering if I knew, was more satisfying than any confrontation would have been. You spent 3 months terrified and paranoid while I was completely calm. That felt fair." Miles tried to apologize, saying the guilt had been eating him alive. I said, "The guilt? Or the fear of being caught?" He couldn't answer. I'd already consulted a lawyer, separated finances, and made arrangements. I filed for divorce the next day. Miles later told our mutual friends that the worst part wasn't the affair ending or the divorce. It was the 3 months of uncertainty, where he'd wondered if I knew, unable to ask, watching me for signs, spiraling into paranoia while I smiled and acted normal. He'd wanted to have his affair in secret. Instead, I'd made him live in a psychological thriller, where the person he'd betrayed held all the cards, and he never knew what I knew until it was too late. I made my cheating wife think I was also cheating and watched her spiral with jealousy. I, 34-year-old male, discovered 2 months ago that my wife, Alexis, 32-year-old female, was having an affair with her coworker. Instead of confronting her, I started acting exactly like someone having an affair. Mysterious absences, secretive phone calls, sudden interest in my appearance, making Alexis insanely jealous while unable to confront me without revealing her own cheating. I found out through her laptop she'd left open with messages to Brett from her office. They'd been together for 5 months, meeting during lunch breaks and after-work team meetings that didn't exist. After the initial shock, I had a realization. Alexis was getting away with the affair partly because I was predictable and trusting. What if I became unpredictable and secretive? I started leaving the house for unexplained evening walks, taking phone calls in other rooms and speaking quietly, smiling at my phone randomly. When Alexis would ask where I was going or who I was talking to, I'd be vague. "Just someone from work," or "out for some fresh air." I started dressing better, wearing cologne, updating my wardrobe. I joined a gym and came home energized and showered. I'd text someone, my brother who was in on it, and laugh, then quickly put my phone away when Alexis entered the room. Within a week, I could see Alexis becoming suspicious and agitated. She'd ask probing questions I'd deflect. She couldn't accuse me of anything without looking hypocritical. My cheating wife became obsessed with whether I was having an affair while hiding her own. As I continued acting like someone having a secret relationship, Alexis became increasingly paranoid and jealous. She'd check my phone when I was in the shower, watch my movements closely, ask detailed questions about my schedule, all while continuing her own affair with Brett. I made sure to leave just enough suspicious evidence. Receipts for coffees I'd bought for a colleague, mentions of a new friend from the gym, references to inside jokes with someone unnamed. I'd come home later than usual. Sorry, lost track of time catching up with someone. When Alexis asked who, I'd smile. Just a friend, you wouldn't know them. Through her laptop, which I'd occasionally check, I could see Alexis texting Brett frantically. I think my husband is seeing someone. He's being so secretive lately. What if he's having an affair? Brett would try to reassure her, but Alexis was spiraling. The irony was delicious. She was having an affair while becoming consumed with jealousy over my fake affair. She started following me occasionally, checking my location, asking neighbors if they'd seen me with anyone. All this effort on monitoring me meant less energy for her actual affair. Brett started complaining in their messages that Alexis was distracted and obsessed with her husband's suspected infidelity. The affair was losing its appeal because Alexis couldn't enjoy it while paranoid about me. My wife confronted me about fake cheating, and I revealed I'd known about her real affair all along. 6 weeks into making Alexis think I was cheating, she finally confronted me. When she accused me of having an affair, I revealed I'd known about Brett the entire time, and had been torturing her with fake infidelity to show her what jealousy feels like. Alexis broke down crying. I know you're having an affair. Just admit it. Who is she? I looked at her calmly. There is no she. I'm not having an affair. She was confused. But you've been so secretive, always on your phone, going out, looking better. I interrupted. All things you've been doing for 5 months while seeing Brett from your office. Her face went white. You know about Brett? I nodded. I've known the whole time. I decided to act like I was also having an affair, to make you experience the jealousy and paranoia you'd feel if roles were reversed. Turns out, you can't handle suspecting your partner of cheating while actually being the cheater. Alexis was devastated. So you've been torturing me psychologically, making me think you were cheating? I said, you've been actually cheating. I just acted like I was. You fell apart from suspicion alone. Imagine how I felt discovering your actual affair. She admitted the jealousy had been consuming her, that she'd barely been able to focus on anything else, that her relationship with Brett had suffered because she was obsessed with my suspected affair. I said, that's what real betrayal feels like. You experienced a fraction of it just from suspicion. I filed for divorce the next day. Alexis had destroyed her affair with Brett through her jealous paranoia about my fake affair, and she'd lost her marriage by having a real one. She'd learned what infidelity-induced jealousy felt like, and it had broken her faster than the truth broke me. I made my cheating husband fall back in love with me just to reject him. I, 29, female, discovered 3 months ago that my husband, Derek, 31, male, was having an emotional affair with a coworker. Instead of confronting him, I decided to compete with her, making him fall back in love with me and choose me over her, not to save our marriage, but to win and then leave him. I found out through his laptop history, showing hours of video calls with someone named Lindsay. I checked his messages and found months of deep emotional connection, sharing feelings, discussing dissatisfaction with our marriage, building intimacy. They hadn't been physical yet, but Derek was clearly falling for her. He'd become distant from me, spending evenings working, but actually video chatting with Lindsay. My first instinct was confrontation and anger. But then I thought, Derek was choosing her over me because he found her more interesting, more engaging, more desirable. What if I made him desperately want me again, made him choose me over her, and then rejected him? I started working out daily, bought new clothes, changed my hair. But more importantly, I became the person Derek had fallen in love with years ago. Spontaneous, passionate, engaged. I started initiating dates, suggesting adventures, being playful and flirtatious. I became mysteriously busy some evenings, unavailable and intriguing. Within 2 weeks, Derek was noticeably more interested in me. He started prioritizing our time together over his calls with Lindsay. I was winning him back, not to keep him, but to prove I could. My husband ended his emotional affair and chose me, not knowing it was a competition I'd already won. As I continued my campaign to recapture Derek's attention, he became increasingly invested in our marriage. His calls with Lindsay decreased. He started pursuing me the way he had when we first dated, planning surprises, expressing affection, choosing evenings with me over his emotional affair. I could see the shift happening. Where he'd been distant and checked out, he was now present and engaged. He'd text me during the day with sweet messages. He'd initiate physical intimacy. He'd talk about our future together. Meanwhile, I monitored his messages with Lindsay. The tone was changing. Where they'd once discussed leaving their respective partners and building a life together, Derek was now pulling back. He'd go days without messaging her. When she'd ask about his feelings, he'd be vague. Lindsay was losing him. I was winning. One evening, Derek sat me down and said, "I feel like we've reconnected lately, like we found each other again. I'd been feeling disconnected from our marriage, but the past 2 months have reminded me why I married you." I smiled and said, "I've enjoyed it too." He looked relieved, almost guilty. "I'm glad we didn't let things drift too far apart." A week later, Derek ended things with Lindsay. I saw the final message. "I've realized my marriage is what I want. I can't continue this connection with you. I'm sorry." Lindsay was devastated. Derek felt noble for choosing his wife, and I had won the competition neither of them knew existed. I revealed I'd known about the affair after he chose me and left him devastated. 2 weeks after Derek ended his emotional affair and recommended himself to our marriage, I told him I'd known about Lindsay the entire time. Then I filed for divorce. We were having dinner when I said, "I need to tell you something. I've known about Lindsay for 3 months. The whole time you were having your emotional affair, I knew." His face went white. "You knew? But you didn't say anything. We've been so good lately." I said, "We've been good because I made us good. I saw you falling for her and I decided to compete. I made you fall back in love with me. I made you choose me over her." He looked confused. "You competed? But why? If you knew, why not just confront me?" I said, "Because confronting you would have been weak, making you desperately want me again, making you end things with her, making you choose me. That was winning. And now that I've won, I'm done." I handed him divorce papers. He was devastated. "But we've been so happy. These past months have been the best we've had in years. You made me fall in love with you again." I said, "I made you fall in love with me to prove I could. To prove that you chose her because you were lazy and complacent, not because she was actually better than me. I won. She lost. Now I'm leaving." Derek begged me to reconsider, saying the affair was over and we'd rebuilt our connection. I said, "You only ended the affair because I made myself irresistible. You would have left me for her if I hadn't competed. You don't get credit for choosing me when I manipulated that choice." The marriage ended. Derek lost both relationships. Lindsay wouldn't take him back after learning he'd chosen his wife, and I was gone. He'd thought reconnecting with me meant redemption. He didn't realize it was my victory lap before leaving. I made my cheating wife paranoid about her affair partner's loyalty. I, 30-year-old male, discovered 3 months ago that my wife, Fiona, 29-year-old female, was having an affair with a guy she met through a mutual friend group. Instead of confronting her, I started planting tiny seeds of doubt about her affair partner's intentions and loyalty, slowly making Fiona paranoid enough to destroy the affair herself through jealousy and suspicion. I found out through text messages on Fiona's phone when she was in the shower. The affair partner was someone named Jackson, a single guy from our broader social circle. They'd been seeing each other for about 4 months, meeting when Fiona claimed to be at yoga or having girls' nights. Reading the messages, I noticed something interesting. Fiona was deeply insecure about Jackson. She'd ask if he was seeing anyone else, if he'd thought about other women, if she was enough for him. Jackson would reassure her, but Fiona's insecurity was constant. I realized I could weaponize this. I started making casual, innocent comments designed to make Fiona doubt Jackson's commitment. Wasn't Jackson at that party with someone last week? They seemed close. Or, I heard Jackson talking about some woman at work. Sounded like he was interested. These comments were always vague, never accusatory, just observational. Fiona would act like she wasn't listening, but I could see her absorbing every word. Within days, I noticed Fiona texting Jackson more frantically, asking questions, seeking reassurance. My wife became obsessed with whether her affair partner was loyal to her. As I continued planting seeds of doubt, Fiona's paranoia about Jackson grew exponentially. She started monitoring his social media obsessively, questioning him about his whereabouts, and becoming jealous of any woman he interacted with, all while still married to me. I'd make casual comments whenever possible. Saw Jackson at the coffee shop with someone today. Didn't want to interrupt their conversation, they looked engaged. Fiona would immediately text Jackson asking where he was and who he was with. Or, Jackson's been really active on Instagram lately, lots of likes on other women's photos. Just an observation. Fiona would spend hours analyzing Jackson's social media activity. Through messages I'd sneak peeks at, I could see Jackson becoming frustrated with Fiona's jealousy. He'd say, "I'm not seeing anyone else. You're the one who's married. Why are you acting jealous?" But Fiona couldn't help herself. Every innocent comment I made about Jackson fed her insecurity. I mentioned that a mutual friend said Jackson had been on dating apps. I said I'd heard Jackson talking about keeping his options open. I casually noted that Jackson seemed flirty at a group hangout. None of these things were necessarily true. They were strategic suggestions designed to make Fiona doubt the affair she was risking everything for. Jackson started pulling away from Fiona's increasingly controlling behavior, which only made her more desperate and paranoid. The affair imploded when my wife's paranoia drove her affair partner away completely. 6 weeks after I started planting doubt, Jackson ended the affair because Fiona's paranoia and jealousy had become unbearable. She confessed everything to me, devastated, and I revealed I'd known all along and had orchestrated her paranoia deliberately. Fiona came home crying one evening. "I need to tell you something. I've been having an affair. With Jackson. It just ended." I acted shocked. "What? An affair? With Jackson from our friend group?" She nodded, devastated. "He ended things. He said I was too jealous, too controlling, too paranoid about him seeing other people. He said I was exhausting." I asked carefully, "Why were you paranoid about him?" She said, "I kept hearing things, that he was with other women, that he was on dating apps, that he wasn't serious about me. I couldn't shake the feeling he was using me." I said, "Where did you hear those things?" She paused. "You mentioned some of them, just casual observations." I nodded. "I did mention those things, because I knew about the affair from the beginning, and I decided to make you destroy it yourself by making you paranoid about Jackson's loyalty." Her face went white. "You knew this whole time?" I said, "I found out 3 months ago. Every comment I made about Jackson was designed to make you doubt him. You became so jealous and controlling that he couldn't stand it anymore." Fiona was devastated. "You manipulated me into ruining my own affair." I said, "You were having an affair. I just made you so insecure about it that you destroyed it through your own jealousy. Jackson left you because you became unbearable. That was your doing, not mine." I filed for divorce the next week. Fiona had lost both relationships. Jackson wouldn't speak to her after her paranoid behavior, and obviously our marriage was over. She'd sabotaged her own affair because I'd made her too insecure to maintain it. I recorded every negative thing my cheating husband said about his affair partner. I, 29-year-old female, discovered 2 months ago that my husband, Preston, 31-year-old male, was having an affair with someone from his running club. Instead of confronting him, I started secretly recording every negative or dismissive comment he made about her to me, then sent the entire compilation to her, showing what he really thought. I found out through his fitness tracker showing routes to an address that wasn't his running club. I followed the location and saw Preston entering an apartment building, later discovering it belonged to someone named Ivy from his running group. I confirmed the affair through messages on his phone. They'd been together for 4 months, meeting after runs when Preston told me he was grabbing coffee with the group. Here's what I realized. Preston complained to me constantly about Ivy without using her name. He'd rant about someone from running club being too clingy, or too intense, or exhausting to deal with. I'd listen sympathetically, not knowing he was talking about his affair partner. Once I knew about the affair, I realized all his complaints were about Ivy. So I started recording them. God, this person from running won't stop texting me. It's suffocating. Someone at the club is so dramatic about everything, I can't deal. This woman is way too invested in my life. It's concerning. I collected 2 weeks of recordings. Preston venting to his wife about how annoying his affair partner was. My husband had no idea all his complaints about his clingy affair partner were being recorded. Over the next few weeks, I accumulated hours of Preston complaining to me about Ivy, never realizing I knew she was his affair partner. Each complaint was recorded carefully on my phone, creating a damning compilation of his true feelings. She wants to see me all the time. Doesn't she have her own life? She gets jealous when I mention my wife, like, what did she expect? Sometimes I wonder what I'm even doing with her. She's exhausting. She's talking about future plans together. I need to slow this down. Preston would vent to me, his wife, about how burdensome his affair had become. I'd respond supportively. That sounds stressful. Have you talked to her about boundaries? He'd say, I can't. She'll get emotional and make it a whole thing. The irony was perfect. Preston was using me as his emotional support to deal with the stress of his affair. I was his sounding board for complaints about the woman he was cheating on me with. Through Ivy's social media, she posted publicly, I could see her posting happy couple-coded content. Sunset photos, coffee date stories, quotes about love. She clearly thought their relationship was serious and romantic. She had no idea Preston was at home calling her clingy, exhausting, and questioning why he was even with her. After a month of recordings, I had enough material. I sent his affair partner every recording of him complaining about her, and both relationships ended. After collecting hours of recordings, I sent the entire compilation to Ivy with a message. Hi, Ivy. I'm Preston's wife. I've known about the affair for 2 months. These are recordings of Preston complaining to me about you every single day. This is what he really thinks. Ivy listened to all of it. Every complaint, every dismissive comment, every moment Preston called her clingy or exhausting, or wondered why he was with her. She called Preston furious. He tried to deny it, but I'd sent time-stamped recordings. His voice was unmistakable. Ivy, you told your wife I'm suffocating? That you can't deal with me? That you question why you're with me? Preston tried to explain it away, but the recordings were clear. He'd been using his wife as emotional support to complain about his affair partner. Ivy ended things immediately. You've been talking shit about me to your wife while pretending to care about me? You're disgusting. Preston came home devastated that his affair had ended. I played dumb. What happened with your running club friend? He said, Ivy broke up with me. Someone sent her recordings of me complaining about her. I said calmly, that was me. I've known about the affair for months. Every time you complained to me about how annoying and clingy she was, I recorded it. Then I showed her what you really thought of her. Preston was horrified. You used me complaining about her against the affair? I said, you were cheating on me with someone you openly found exhausting, using me as your therapist to process that. Both of you deserve to know who you were really dealing with. I filed for divorce that week. Preston lost both relationships. Ivy wouldn't forgive him for trash-talking her to his wife, and obviously our marriage was over. He'd thought he could maintain both relationships by compartmentalizing. He never expected I'd merge them by showing each woman what he really said when they weren't around. I spent months secretly preparing to leave while my cheating wife thought we were fine. I, 36-year-old male, discovered 8 months ago that my wife, Vanessa, 34-year-old female, was having an affair with her personal trainer. Instead of confronting her immediately, I made a calculated decision. I'd methodically untangle our shared life, finances, property, social connections, while acting completely normal, so when I left, it would be instant and total. I found out when Vanessa left her phone in the bathroom and a text came through. "Can't wait to see you tomorrow. I love you." From someone named Marcus. I checked her messages and found months of an affair, emotional and physical. My initial instinct was confrontation and immediate separation. But we'd built a deeply interconnected life. Joint bank accounts, shared car lease, co-signed apartment lease, merged friend groups, intertwined families. Leaving impulsively would mean months of painful untangling while living together or dealing with her. So, I decided to untangle everything first, then leave cleanly. I started with finances. Over 3 months, I quietly moved my income to a new individual account, claiming my company required direct deposit changes. I paid off my portion of shared debts. I removed my name from joint bills one by one. Vanessa never noticed because I kept contributing the same amounts to household expenses, just from a different account now. I researched apartments and found one I could afford alone. I didn't sign a lease yet, but I knew where I'd go. Meanwhile, I acted completely normal. Loving husband, present partner, no indication anything was wrong. I systematically separated every aspect of our shared life while my cheating wife noticed nothing. Over 6 months, I carefully disentangled myself from Vanessa's life while maintaining perfect normalcy at home. Every action was strategic, removing my connection to shared systems without creating suspicion. I opened new individual accounts for utilities in my name at my future apartment. I updated my mailing address for important documents to a P.O. box. I moved sentimental items to a storage unit gradually, a few boxes every couple weeks. I separated our Amazon accounts, our streaming services, our shared digital life, claiming I wanted better recommendations or to organize things better. Vanessa found these requests slightly annoying but didn't question them. I told our landlord I wouldn't renew our lease when it ended. I gave notice privately, getting the landlord to agree not to mention it to Vanessa. I signed a lease for a new apartment starting the day after our current lease ended. I withdrew from shared friend groups subtly, declining invitations, being too busy for couple hangouts. I strengthened individual friendships outside our joint social circle. I informed my family privately about the affair and my plan. They were shocked I'd been preparing for months without telling anyone. The most important step. I consulted a lawyer and had divorce papers prepared, ready to file. Through all this, 8 months of preparation, I remained a normal, attentive husband. We had dinner together, watched TV, had conversations. Vanessa had no idea I was systematically removing myself from her life. She continued her affair with Marcus, thinking she had both relationships stable. I left instantly and completely after months of preparation, and my wife couldn't comprehend how fast I disappeared. On the last day of our lease, while Vanessa was at yoga, meeting Marcus, I moved out completely. Professional movers took my furniture and belongings to my new apartment. By the time Vanessa came home, I was gone. I left divorce papers on the counter with a note. I've known about Marcus for 8 months. I've spent that time preparing to leave cleanly. Our lease ends today. Everything shared between us has been separated. Papers are filed. My lawyer will contact you. Vanessa called me in shock. "What is happening? Where are you? What do you mean you've known for 8 months?" I said calmly, "I found out about the affair and decided to leave. But I didn't want months of messy separation living together, so I spent 8 months preparing. Now I'm gone." She couldn't comprehend it. "You've been planning this for 8 months and acting normal." I said, "I acted normal because there was nothing to discuss. You were having an affair. I decided to leave. The only question was logistics." She was devastated. Not about losing the marriage, but about the shock of how completely I'd vanished. No warning, no fight, no messy transition period, just gone. Our landlord confirmed I'd given notice months ago. Our bank confirmed I'd separated accounts legally. Friends confirmed I'd been pulling back for months. Vanessa called it cold and calculated. I called it efficient. She'd thought she was getting away with the affair. She'd had no idea that for 8 months, every normal day with me was me counting down to an exit I'd already planned. By the time she realized I knew, I'd already left. No drama, no confrontation, no painful untangling period. Just a clean, complete departure from a life she'd thought was stable. I started dating someone better after finding out about the affair without confronting. I, 31-year-old female, discovered 5 months ago that my boyfriend, Owen, 33-year-old male, was cheating on me with his ex-girlfriend. Instead of confronting him, I simply started dating someone else. Not for revenge, but because I genuinely met someone amazing. Owen had to watch me be happier with someone new while unable to accuse me of cheating since he was doing the same. I found out when Owen left his laptop open with messages to Kelsey, his ex from college. They'd reconnected at a reunion and had been seeing each other for months. The messages showed they were sleeping together whenever he claimed to be working late or on business trips. I felt hurt, but also strangely liberated. I'd been in this relationship out of habit more than passion. Finding out about the cheating gave me clarity that I'd been settling. A week later, I matched with someone on a dating app, Marcus, 32-year-old male. I almost didn't go on the date, still technically in a relationship. But then I thought, Owen is seeing his ex. I'm just meeting someone for coffee. The date was incredible. Marcus was funny, thoughtful, emotionally available. We had chemistry I hadn't felt with Owen in years. I started seeing Marcus regularly, going on dates when Owen thought I was out with friends. It wasn't revenge. I was genuinely developing feelings for someone new. Owen remained oblivious, continuing his affair with Kelsey while I quietly started a new relationship with Marcus. My cheating boyfriend noticed I was happier but couldn't accuse me since he was cheating too. As my relationship with Marcus developed, I became noticeably happier. I was excited about life, energized, glowing. Owen noticed but was trapped. He couldn't question my happiness or my whereabouts because he was doing the same thing. When I'd come home from dates with Marcus, Owen would ask, "You seem really happy lately."
Where were you?
I'd use his exact excuses. Out with friends, just having a good time. When I'd text Marcus during our evenings at home, smiling at my phone, Owen would notice, "Who are you texting?" I'd say vaguely, "Just someone from work, it's nothing." His excuses, his tactics, his evasions, I used them all. And he couldn't call me out without revealing his own affair. I started dressing up more, wearing perfume, putting in effort. Owen asked, "Are you seeing someone?" I countered, "Are you seeing someone? You've been gone a lot lately." He backed down immediately. "No, of course not. Just stressed with work." The difference was, I was genuinely falling for Marcus. My happiness wasn't an act. Owen could see I was emotionally investing elsewhere, and it was driving him crazy. He started being more attentive, trying to win back attention I was no longer giving him. But I wasn't interested anymore. I had someone better. Owen was watching me have what he thought was a revenge affair, not knowing it was real, and I was happier than I'd been in years. My boyfriend confessed his affair when he saw me with someone better, but I was already gone. 3 months into seeing Marcus, Owen saw us together at a restaurant. The next day, he confessed to his affair with Kelsey, expecting me to confess to cheating too. But I'd already emotionally left the relationship. Owen came home devastated. "We need to talk. I saw you last night. With someone. Who was that?" I said calmly, "That was Marcus. I've been seeing him for 3 months." Owen looked relieved and guilty simultaneously. "So we've both been cheating. I need to tell you, I've been seeing Kelsey, my ex." I said, "I know. I've known for 5 months." His face fell. "You knew? And you started seeing this Marcus as revenge?" I shook my head. "Not revenge. I just met someone I actually have a connection with. Someone who's emotionally available and makes me happy." Owen said, "So we both cheated. We're even. We can end both affairs and work on us." I laughed. "I'm not ending things with Marcus. I'm ending things with you. I'm in love with Marcus." Owen was stunned. "But you cheated too. We both did the same thing." I said, "The difference is, you cheated while wanting to keep our relationship. I moved on entirely. I don't want to work on us. I want to be with Marcus." I moved out that week. Owen tried to contact me multiple times, saying we'd both made mistakes and should forgive each other. But there was nothing to forgive on my end. I hadn't cheated for revenge. I'd genuinely fallen for someone while Owen was busy with his affair. By the time he noticed I'd moved on, I was already gone emotionally. Owen lost me, and eventually Kelsey, who didn't want a relationship with someone who'd been dating someone else simultaneously. I'm now happily with Marcus. Owen thought we were both cheating and could reconcile. He didn't realize I'd already chosen someone better. I started using my cheating boyfriend's exact excuses and watched him unravel. I, 31-year-old female, discovered 2 months ago that my boyfriend Caleb, 33-year-old male, of 4 years, was cheating. Rather than confront him, I started using his exact same excuses and schedule, matching every late night at work and plans with the guys with my own identical absences, forcing him to choose between his affair and maintaining his lies. I found out when I surprised him at his office late night with dinner and discovered he wasn't there. His coworker said he'd left hours ago. When I called, Caleb said he'd stepped out for coffee, but would be back soon. That's when I knew. Over the next week, I confirmed it by tracking patterns. Every Tuesday and Thursday, Caleb worked late. Every other Saturday, he had plans with friends. These were perfectly consistent affair windows. Instead of confronting him, I decided to mirror his behavior exactly. The next Tuesday, when Caleb texted saying he'd be working late, I replied, "Me too, actually. Don't wait up." He seemed surprised, but said okay. Thursday, same thing. Before he could text me, I texted him, "Working late tonight, probably won't be home until 10. He called immediately. "You're working late too? What are you working on?" I was vague. "Just project stuff. You know how it is." That Saturday, when he said he was meeting friends, I said, "Perfect timing. I'm meeting up with some friends too." He asked which friends. I named people he didn't know well. For the first time in months, Caleb had to choose between his affair schedule and not looking suspicious. My boyfriend couldn't maintain his affair when I matched every absence with my own. Once I started mirroring Caleb's schedule, the logistics of his affair became impossible. He couldn't be with his affair partner if I wasn't home to provide an alibi, and he couldn't question my absences without exposing his own lies. The next Tuesday, Caleb didn't text about working late, probably hoping I'd be home so he could sneak out. Instead, I texted first. "Staying late at the office tonight, probably until 9. He called within minutes. Again? You've been working late a lot. I said, same as you. Projects are crazy right now. He tried to dissuade me. You should come home. You need rest. I'll pick up dinner. I said, that's sweet, but I really need to finish this. You can eat without me. He paused, then said, actually, I might work late too then. I said, okay, so neither of us will be home. Should we just plan on seeing each other tomorrow? Another pause. He was trapped. If we were both out, there was no comfortable home base. His affair partner would expect him, but he couldn't explain why his girlfriend was suddenly as unavailable as he was. He said, never mind, I'll come home. We should spend the evening together. I agreed pleasantly. That Tuesday, his affair partner presumably waited for him while he awkwardly sat at home with me, because he couldn't explain his sudden unavailability without revealing the affair pattern. This happened 3 more times. Every time Caleb tried to create space for his affair, I created identical space for myself. He started to panic. My boyfriend confessed to cheating not out of guilt, but because my schedule destroyed his affair. After 3 weeks of matching Caleb's absences, he broke down and confessed to the affair. Not because he felt guilty, but because my mirroring had made it impossible for him to maintain both relationships, and he was terrified I'd discovered something worse. His affair partner had apparently become frustrated with his sudden unreliability. He'd missed multiple planned meetups because I'd coincidentally scheduled identical absences. She'd started questioning whether he was serious about her. Meanwhile, Caleb couldn't figure out why I was suddenly so busy. I'd been a homebody who rarely went out, and now I was mysteriously unavailable during his exact affair windows. It seemed too coincidental. He sat me down and said, I need to ask you something. Are you seeing someone? I almost laughed. I said, why would you think that? He said, you've been gone a lot, working late, meeting friends. You're never around anymore. I said, I'm around exactly as much as you are. I've been matching your schedule. His face changed. He realized I'd been deliberately mirroring him. He confessed everything, the affair, the lies, all of it. But not because he wanted to come clean. He confessed because he thought I must already know, and was having my own affair in retaliation. When I told him I'd known for weeks and had simply been copying his schedule to make his affair impossible, he was stunned. I said, you can't maintain a secret relationship if the person providing your alibi is never home. You couldn't ask me to stop without explaining why you needed me there. I moved out the next week. Caleb lost both relationships. His affair partner ended things when she learned the truth, and obviously we were done. He'd thought he was clever, maintaining a double life. He hadn't considered what would happen if I lived one too. I started telling everyone the truth about our marriage problems, and my husband's lies collapsed. I, 30-year-old female, discovered 10 weeks ago that my husband, Marcus, 33-year-old male, was having an affair with someone from his gym. Instead of confronting him privately, I started being radically honest with everyone about our actual marriage. Friends, family, social media, which made all the lies Marcus told his affair partner to justify the affair completely fall apart. I found out through messages on his phone from someone named Haley. They'd been together for 5 months, meeting after his gym sessions. Reading the messages, I noticed Marcus had told Haley elaborate lies about our marriage to justify the affair. He'd told her we were basically roommates who barely spoke, that we hadn't been intimate in over a year, that I was cold and distant and our marriage was dead except on paper. None of this was true. We had a normal marriage with normal problems, but we were affectionate, communicated regularly, and were intimate weekly. Marcus had created a fictional, terrible marriage to make Haley feel okay about the affair, like she was rescuing him from loneliness. Instead of confronting Marcus, I decided to just start telling the truth about our marriage publicly. At dinner with friends, when someone asked how we were doing, instead of saying, "Great," I'd say honestly, "We're good. Had a date night last week, working through some small stuff but overall solid." On social media, I started posting real moments. Us laughing together, anniversaries, casual affection. I was destroying Marcus's narrative without him realizing. My husband's affair partner started seeing proof our marriage wasn't the disaster he described. As I continued being publicly honest about our actual marriage, Haley started seeing evidence that completely contradicted what Marcus had told her. Through mutual acquaintances and social media, she was confronted with a very different reality. Marcus had told Haley we were emotionally disconnected. But I'd post on social media, "Love coming home to someone who actually listens." Marcus stayed up with me last night talking through work stress. Grateful for this man. Marcus had told Haley we never did anything together, but friends would mention in group chats, "Loved seeing you two at trivia night. You guys are so fun together." Marcus had told Haley I was cold and unaffectionate. But I'd casually mention at gatherings, "Marcus is so sweet. Left me a love note this morning before work." All of this was true. I wasn't making things up. I was just being honest about our actual, normal, decent marriage. But it was destroying Marcus's justification for the affair. Through messages I'd check on his phone, I could see Haley confronting him. "Your wife posted about date night. I thought you two barely interacted. Someone said you two seemed really happy at that party last week. Your wife talks about you really lovingly on social media. Is your marriage actually as bad as you said?" Marcus would scramble to explain. "She's just putting on a show for social media." Or, "We're maintaining appearances." But the evidence was piling up against his narrative. The affair ended when his affair partner realized he'd lied about having a terrible marriage. 8 weeks after I started being publicly honest about our marriage, Haley ended the affair after realizing Marcus had lied about his marriage being dead to justify cheating. Marcus confessed, and I revealed I deliberately demolished his narrative through radical honesty. Marcus came home upset. "Haley ended things. She doesn't believe me anymore about our marriage." I said, "What about our marriage?" He admitted the affair. "I was seeing someone from the gym, Haley. It's over now. She thinks I lied to her about us." I said calmly, "What did you tell her about us?" He said, "That we're basically roommates, that we're disconnected and distant, that our marriage is over, except legally." I said, "And she stopped believing that?" He nodded. "She kept seeing evidence that we're actually fine. Your social media posts, friends mentioning us being happy. She accused me of lying about the state of our marriage to justify cheating." I said, "She was right. I've known about the affair for 2 months. When I found out, I started being radically honest about our actual marriage, with friends, online, everywhere. I demolished the false narrative you created to make Haley comfortable with being the affair partner." Marcus was stunned. "You deliberately contradicted what I told her?" I said, "I told the truth. You told lies. Haley realized you weren't a lonely man in a dead marriage. You were a regular husband having an affair. That made her the villain, not the rescuer. So she left." Marcus tried to explain he'd needed to frame things that way to justify the relationship. I said, "Exactly. You needed to lie about our marriage to make the affair feel acceptable. I just told everyone the truth and your justification disappeared." I filed for divorce the next week. Marcus lost Haley because my honesty destroyed his lies, and he lost me because the betrayal was unforgivable, regardless of how he'd framed it. I stopped reacting to signs of my husband's affair, and it drove his affair partner crazy. I, 35-year-old female, discovered 4 months ago that my husband, Blake, 37-year-old male, was having an affair with a woman from his gym. Instead of confronting him or showing any jealousy, I became completely unbothered and secure, which apparently destroyed his affair partner's confidence so badly that she ended things herself. I found out through the classic signs: new cologne, suspicious texting, gym sessions that lasted hours. I checked his phone one night and confirmed it. Messages with Tara about meeting up, romantic exchanges, plans for when I'd be out of town. My initial reaction was devastation. But then I realized something. I could either fall apart and give his affair the dramatic energy affairs thrive on, or I could be so secure and unbothered that it would deflate the whole thing. I chose unbothered. When Blake came home smelling like unfamiliar perfume, I didn't comment. When he was on his phone smiling, I didn't ask who he was texting. When he said he needed more gym time, I cheerfully said, "Great! I'm glad you're prioritizing your health." I was warm, affectionate, and completely secure. No jealousy, no suspicion, no questions. Just a wife who seemed totally confident in her marriage. Within days, I noticed Blake seemed confused by my lack of reaction to his obvious affair signs. He'd leave his phone visible, almost like he wanted me to see something, but I'd just ignore it. My husband's affair partner became obsessed with why I wasn't threatened by her. As I maintained my completely unbothered demeanor, something unexpected happened. Blake's affair partner, Tara, became increasingly insecure about why I wasn't reacting to their affair. I found this out through messages Blake carelessly left open. Tara: "Does your wife know about us?" Blake: "I don't think so. She hasn't said anything." Tara: "But you're not even being careful. She must suspect." Blake: "She seems totally fine. Normal even." I could see Tara's insecurity building through the messages. Why doesn't she care that you're gone all the time? Is she also cheating? Does she even love you? Blake would try to reassure her, but Tara was fixated on my lack of jealousy. She started suggesting Blake be more obvious, almost like she wanted to force a confrontation. Meanwhile, I continued being a warm, secure, happy wife. I went out with friends, pursued hobbies, looked great. When Blake came home late, I'd greet him pleasantly. "How was the gym? I had a wonderful evening." My confidence seemed to eat at Tara. The messages showed her becoming increasingly desperate. "When are you going to tell her about us? Why is your wife so secure? It's weird. I need to know this relationship is going somewhere." Blake seemed stressed trying to manage Tara's insecurity about my security. The affair wasn't exciting anymore. It was exhausting, because his affair partner couldn't handle that I wasn't threatened. The affair ended because his affair partner couldn't compete with a wife who wasn't jealous. 6 weeks after I started being completely unbothered, Tara ended the affair herself. She sent Blake a final message saying she couldn't continue with someone whose wife clearly didn't care enough to fight for him, because it made her feel like the relationship wasn't even worth getting caught for. Blake was devastated. He tried to salvage things, but Tara had made up her mind. "Your wife's total lack of reaction makes me feel pathetic, like I'm not even worth her jealousy. I can't be the other woman to someone who doesn't seem to view me as a threat." The irony was perfect. Tara had wanted to be the exciting secret, the woman worth risking the marriage for. But my lack of jealousy had communicated something else, that she wasn't significant enough to even warrant a reaction. Blake came to me confused. Tara ended things. She said, "You don't seem to care." I looked at him calmly. "Tara? Your gym friend?" He realized I'd known. "You knew about us?" I shrugged. "I knew you were seeing someone. I decided it wasn't worth my energy to react. If you want to leave, leave. If you want to stay, stay. I'm good either way." Blake was floored. "You're good either way? I had an affair and you're just unbothered?" I said, "Your affair was your choice. My peace is mine. Turns out being unbothered was the best revenge. Your affair partner couldn't handle that I wasn't threatened by her. Blake begged to work on the marriage, saying the affair meant nothing. I said, then prove it. Not to me, to yourself. The affair collapsed because the person I didn't fight was the affair partner's self-worth. My confidence made her feel insignificant, and that was more effective than any confrontation would have been. I stopped being my cheating wife's emotional support and made her affair partner carry it all. I, 32-year-old male, discovered 8 weeks ago that my wife, Diana, 31-year-old female, was having an affair with someone she met at a work conference. Instead of confronting her, I completely stopped being her emotional support system, no longer listening to her problems or validating her feelings, forcing her to rely entirely on her affair partner for emotional needs he never signed up for. I found out through hotel charges on our shared credit card from a city where Diana had attended a conference. When I checked her messages, I found months of communication with Tyler, someone she'd met there and continued seeing during work trips. Reading their messages, I noticed something. Diana used me as her primary emotional support. She'd come home stressed and vent to me for hours about work, family, anxieties. I'd listen, validate, comfort, advise. It was exhausting, but I'd always been her rock. With Tyler, their messages were fun and flirty, surface-level romance without the deep emotional labor. I realized Tyler was getting the easy, fun version of Diana, while I handled all her emotional heaviness. What if I stopped? I started responding to Diana's emotional needs with minimal engagement. When she'd try to vent about work stress, I'd say, "That sounds tough," and return to what I was doing. When she'd seek validation, I'd offer generic responses. When she needed comfort, I'd be physically present, but emotionally absent. Within days, Diana's emotional needs had nowhere to go but to Tyler. My wife dumped all her emotional needs on her affair partner, and he started drowning. As I continued withdrawing emotional support, Diana unconsciously redirected all those needs to Tyler. Through messages I'd occasionally check, I could see the dynamic shift dramatically. What had been a fun affair became Tyler's second job as Diana's therapist. Diana would text Tyler paragraphs about work stress, family drama, health anxieties, friend conflicts, everything she used to process with me. Tyler's responses went from enthusiastic to obligatory to overwhelmed. Tyler, that sounds really stressful. Hope it gets better. Diana, can we talk about this more? I really need to process it. Tyler, I'm kind of busy right now, maybe later? The affair that had been exciting and romantic was now Diana calling Tyler crying about her boss, texting him at midnight about anxiety, needing constant reassurance and emotional validation. Tyler had signed up for romance and excitement. He was getting a full-time emotional support role he never wanted. Meanwhile, I remained pleasant but emotionally unavailable at home. Diana would try to engage me. Can we talk about something that's bothering me? I'd respond, I'm pretty tired tonight, maybe another time. She'd turn to Tyler, who was already exhausted from being her emotional dumping ground. His messages showed increasing frustration. I feel like I'm your therapist, not your boyfriend. The affair ended because I made her affair partner shoulder emotional labor he couldn't handle. 6 weeks after I stopped being Diana's emotional support, Tyler ended the affair because it had become exhausting, unpaid emotional labor. Diana confessed everything to me, desperate for the support I'd withdrawn. But by then, I'd already decided to leave. Diana came home devastated. Tyler broke up with me. He said I was too emotionally demanding and he couldn't handle it anymore. I said calmly, That's unfortunate. She looked at me desperately. I need to talk about this. I need support. Why have you been so distant lately? I said, I've been giving you space to handle your own emotional needs. She broke down and confessed the affair. I was seeing Tyler. It just ended, and I feel like I'm losing you too. You've been so detached. I said, I know about Tyler. I've known for 2 months. When I found out, I stopped being your emotional support system. Everything you used to process with me, you had to take to him instead. Diana looked shocked. You deliberately stopped supporting me emotionally? I said, you were having an affair with someone who got the fun version of you, while I did all the emotional labor. I decided to stop. Tyler got to experience what it's actually like to be your primary support, and he couldn't handle it. The affair ended because I made it work instead of fun. Diana begged me to go back to how things were, saying she'd ended the affair and needed me. I said, you drove Tyler away by making him do emotional work he didn't sign up for. You're losing me because you betrayed me while using me as your unpaid therapist. Both relationships ended because you took more than you gave. I filed for divorce the next week. Diana lost both relationships. Tyler because I'd forced him to carry emotional weight that destroyed the affair's appeal. And me because the betrayal was unforgivable. She'd wanted Tyler for excitement while keeping me for emotional support. I'd forced Tyler to provide both, and he'd crumbled under the weight. I thanked my husband's affair partner for taking him off my hands temporarily. I, 28-year-old female, discovered 3 months ago that my husband, Graham, 30-year-old male, was having an affair with a coworker. Instead of getting angry, I sent his affair partner a message genuinely thanking her for entertaining him while I focused on myself, completely reframing their romantic affair as a favor she was doing me, which made the whole thing feel pathetic and transactional. I found out through the typical signs: late nights at work, phone privacy, new clothes. I confirmed it by checking his messages. He'd been seeing Sadie from his office for about 4 months. My first reaction was anger and betrayal, but then I had an unusual thought. What if instead of being the jealous, devastated wife, I just treated this like Sadie was providing a service that benefited me? I found Sadie on social media and sent her a direct message. Hi, Sadie. I'm Graham's wife. I know about your relationship. I just wanted to say thank you. I've been overwhelmed with work, and having you keep Graham entertained has given me much-needed time to focus on my career and personal projects. I appreciate you taking that off my plate temporarily. Sadie didn't respond, but I knew she'd read it. I started treating Graham's affair time as my personal time. When he'd say he was working late, meeting Sadie, I'd say enthusiastically, "Perfect! I have a work thing anyway. This timing works out great." I was treating their affair like convenient scheduling, not betrayal. My husband's affair partner became disturbed by me treating their relationship as a babysitting favor. After my initial message, Sadie seemed disturbed but didn't respond. I continued treating Graham's affair as a practical arrangement that benefited me, which apparently destroyed any romance or validation Sadie was getting from it. When Graham would prepare for dates with Sadie, I'd cheerfully say, "Have fun. I'm using this time to finally organize the garage. This works out perfectly." When he'd come home late from seeing her, I'd say, "Thank you for staying out. I got so much work done without interruptions." I sent Sadie periodic updates. "Thanks again for keeping Graham occupied last Thursday. I had a really productive evening." Or, "I appreciate you taking him off my hands this weekend. Gave me time for self-care." Through Graham's messages, which he left increasingly careless, I could see Sadie was deeply uncomfortable. Sadie: "Your wife keeps thanking me, like I'm providing childcare." Graham: "Just ignore her. She's being weird." Sadie: "It's making this feel transactional, not romantic." That was exactly the point. By treating their affair as a favor to me rather than a betrayal, I was stripping it of all its romantic, rebellious, validating energy. Sadie wasn't the exciting other woman. She was the unpaid babysitter of my husband. Graham tried to create romance and significance, but my framing kept intruding. The affair ended because I made it feel like unpaid labor instead of romance. 7 weeks after I started thanking Sadie for taking Graham off my hands, she ended the affair because my reframing had made the whole thing feel like she was doing me a service instead of having a passionate relationship. Graham confessed, devastated. Graham came home upset. Sadie ended things. She said it doesn't feel right anymore. I said sympathetically, "Oh no, I was finding the arrangement really helpful." He stared at me. "Arrangement?" I said, "You seeing Sadie. It gave me time for my own projects. What happened?" He admitted the affair. "You knew? This whole time?" I nodded. "Of course. I sent Sadie a message thanking her for keeping you entertained while I focused on work. She was doing me a favor." Graham looked horrified. "You thanked her? For the affair?" I said, "Why wouldn't I? She was spending time with you, so I didn't have to." "That's helpful." He said, "You were supposed to be devastated, jealous. You treated it like she was babysitting me." I shrugged. "That's essentially what she was doing, taking you off my hands temporarily. Apparently she didn't like that framing." Sadie had told Graham she felt used and devalued, not by him cheating on his wife, but by the wife treating her like unpaid help rather than a romantic threat. I filed for divorce the next week, but the damage was done. Graham had lost Sadie because I'd made their affair feel pathetic and transactional instead of romantic and significant. She'd wanted to be the other woman he chose over his wife. Instead, I'd made her feel like the free babysitter his wife was grateful to have.